Welcome to Carolina Sculpture Studio. My name's Clint Button and I'm a granite sculptor. So I work down this side, working on this big long feather here at the bottom. As you see, there's a big pile of gravel dust here. Now, that's not trash, okay? If you don't have suction, like my suction is going to drop out. Let's see if I can turn this so you can see it. Right there. See this big long cylinder thing? See if I can take a pencil. See that big silver thing right there? Okay, well the bottom of that has a can on it. And the dust goes into the top up through my suction tube and around, and it comes down that tube, the black hose, and then down into that long silver thing, and there's a dropout on the bottom of it for the heavier debris. And you can make one like that. But I'll take this. If you don't have something that'll do a dropout like that, you can just sweep it up and save it. But see, I can suck all this up, and then what it'll do, if I can't, I don't know if this will quite reach down to it. Yes, if this will reach. And all of the dust fine deadly dust will get sucked up into my dust collector and taken out of the system, and it'll get trapped. But all the heavier debris will settle out into that catch can, and that stuff, that gravel, is valuable too. So I'll save it. And I'll show you later on what it's good for. We use the dust to glue letters with. When we cut letters, or if I wanted, you know, some aspect of this carving to be a different color, I could mask it off and then blow it with the dust, and it'll glue it, give it a different value. It's a good way if you're doing, like, you know, I did some peaches one time. We blued all the peaches, and to blue them, to make them a little bit more blue, and that differentiates them from the foliage. Or you could do it the other way around. So, but that's an old-fashioned technique that not a lot of people do, because not a lot of people have dust anymore, because they're not carving. And if they're carving, they're wasting it, blowing it all over the place and sucking it up and taking it home with them. They're not actually, you know, controlling it with the dust collector. And now, if you want, you can find some Torch little cabinet dust collectors. I've got one on my mobile unit, and then I've got my big Torch for the studio. And I converted both of them to single-phase motors. I took the two 23-phase motors off and put single-phase on, and you can only go up to about 5 horsepower with a single phase. So I got a 5 horse single phase on my big dust collector. I'm pretty sure. I don't think it's a 3, I think it's a 5 horse. And then I got a small one on my little Torch. They work great. And they're bag filters, and you have to shake them to get the dust to come out so they still work. But if you put a cyclone in front of it, it'll separate a lot of the dust out first. So. But I wanted to show you that before I swept it on the floor. And we'll just keep carving. I've got to put this together. I'm trying to stay off of this edge. I'm not going to get right up and finish this close. I want to get this edge pushed down, like up here where it sticks out. I'm going to work that back some, but I'm not going to go really crazy with it. I'm going to leave it there to support that feather for right now. And I want to work this and get this feather to where it's angled really well, to where it goes where it needs to go, so I can understand how to work on her. And then I'm going to start working on her lower extremities here to try to make this look pretty, and then align her so she's all in good shape. And just keep cutting. Gotten this roughed in. It isn't anywhere near finished, but it's pretty close. It's down to these points I put on the feather, and there's one down here on the very bottom. And so I got that face pushed back generally. I don't want to go ahead and cut this 2-inch border here now. Okay, I'll get it close, leave it a little tall, and then when I can justify this with the top, we'll finish that up. What I am going to do is I've got a fair amount of height down here. You see I got up to, not quite 2 inches. And then the feather, wherever my pencil went, my feather goes roughly right along here. And so I want to take this out. We got to be really careful. I'll probably saw into it just a little bit just to get it started, because I've got, an inch or more room, and I'll just touch it a little bit just to put, a real shallow channel in there. Break it off just a few times to lower it. And then after that, as soon as I'll cut it real short, I'll take either my chisel, my 9-point, and I'll just work it off. I won't go like this. I'll work into the middle, okay? This feather is reinforced on the model. I don't have it way out here all by itself and just cut thin like a feather. It's got a fade behind it, so this supported all the way out to the edge. I'm not going to try to produce that. We want to leave this edge a little fat so we can produce the edge like we always talk about doing. When we start carving this, we'll carve the edge, and then we'll carve away from the edge and create. Usually a lot of times when I do a fade like this, I'll put a little bit of a scotia, a little bit of curve on it. An important thing to understand is that if you put, this is why we do scotias when we've got a niche versus doing a flat background and a flat wall and like square corners, because you'll have a line, you'll have a miter where those two faces meet. There'll be a line. And if those faces aren't perfect, that line will be all crooked, and it'll look very obvious, and it'll look bad. You don't want that. So we'll cheat, and underneath, this is one good example, because this is going to be something that people see. You got to remember when you're cutting a job, what people are going to have access to be able to see. Now, they're not going to be able to look down on top of her, I don't know, her bodice or neckline is going to be fairly high. And so they're not going to be able to see like on top of her shoulders, on the back, past the crest, the crown. They're not going to be able to see the backside, stuff like that. We don't want to leave them nasty, but people aren't going to see them. This and this reinforcement down here is going to be really obvious, because people are going to be standing and they can look down and see it. And so you got to think about, when you're working on something. My favorite example is people, you redo a bathroom floor, and people do all this work, and they're working in the bathroom invariably, and the door's open. And so they may put the buggered up corner of the vinyl when they're redoing the floor, and they'll kind of hide it behind the door, because that's where they got access. And they're going, oh yeah, nobody's ever going to see that, because it's hidden behind the door. Okay, well, when you go in and sit down on the toilet and close the bathroom door, a lot of times that buggered up spot is right there in front of you, and you got nothing else to look at while you're in the bathroom. So we're going to take this, and as our plan to finish it is we'll have a nice edge on here, probably that's curved around a little bit so that it's complete. And then we'll have a scotia that fades, and we come down here, and when we meet this ground will be flat, but where they meet will still be a curve, and that curve will help that support material disappear, because your eye won't have a line to identify it and discern what's going on there. There'll be something there, but you'll have to look hard to see it. And so our goal will be to axe this in a way that we don't leave a definitive vertical line where this flat part meets the curve, so that this all disappears. And we won't undercut it a lot. I mean, we're not going to go back in here, because this is down where somebody could go and say, this looks pretty fragile, huh? And then they fool with it, and it ends up being fragile. So, but when you do things like that, that's part of why we do scotias instead of straight square edges and flat bottoms, is because the demarcation between those two planes really causes problems. Same thing here. We want this to curve in and to curve in from the bottom, and then this flat will look great, and you won't see this support anywhere near as well. But right now we're just going to work some stripes in here and cut this down. I'm going to leave probably this much of it, so that, you know, I got a safety margin, and that's about the 2 inches in. That'll be fine. So, and then when we get done, we'll be able to cut the edge of this feather, and when this feather is all defined, then we can go in after we cut this flat plane, and we'll cut that scotia to go back in, and it'll look really good. And so we'll have a scotia here for like this niche, this alcove that she's supposed to be standing in. But underneath here, we'll do the same technique to make this disappear down underneath. Okay? I'm going to start cutting. I started putting a few lines in. I put lines close together so they'll break out easy. You'll run into problems if you take your 9-point and you're between saw cuts, you know, pushing this out, and it holds your 9 points to where you cut these in. You got, you know, a 1/2 inch or 5/8 of an inch. There's enough in there that this 9-point can't rotate and spin, and it'll stick in there and it'll wedge. And if you keep pushing, something's going to break, okay? And you don't know what it is. This isn't meant to be a wedge, okay? It's meant to pulverize stone on the face where these 9 points are as it bounces. If you push in there and it doesn't turn, and you keep pushing, you can cause a really big failure, especially if you're out here near this edge. It could blow off on here and take a whole big chunk of that out. Really, really not a good idea. Okay, so if it starts to stick in, get off of it, and then knock off the side so this can spin and spin like it's supposed to work. You don't want to start putting any type of a wedge pressure around this edge at all. It's a really, really dangerous, bad thing to do. Okay. I also wanted to say, this is a 1-inch machine. This is a 3/4 inch machine. I know people may only have one hand machine, okay? I understand that. I know they're expensive. But you got to understand that you have different size machines to do different jobs, not because you can only handle a 3/4 inch and you're afraid of a 1 inch, or you can only handle a 1 inch and you're afraid of 1 1/4 inch. The bigger hammer is for bigger work, okay? When we've got to push all this stone off, it's going to take a lot of work. Now, can you do it with a 3/4 inch? Probably, you know, you can. I know some guys that carved all kinds of stuff, and all they had was a 3/4 inch machine. But a lot of times you'll start talking to them, and the reason that they've only done it with that machine is because they're afraid of a big machine. Okay, I'm trying to show you that you don't have to muscle this machine and hold it. You have to control it, and you'll spend all this time like, see, I'm already leaning on this hose, and it's already starting to get loose on the top. So I'll end up poking a hole through here. I have to cut 1 inch or so off and move this up, because this will go through, because I'm pushing on the back of it, and I'm leaning into it with my shoulders on when I'm up here and I'm pushing. But you need to use the right machine for the job. Just getting a smaller machine and thinking that you'll be safe isn't necessarily the case. You'll take longer to do the same work. You'll probably push harder to do the same work. The harder you push, the less control you have if something goes wrong or breaks off or it gets loose or you tip it just a little bit and it goes more. And if you go slower and work longer, you get tired, and the more tired you are, the easier it is to make a mistake. So resist trying to use just a smaller hand machine because it's comfortable. It should be based upon what you're doing. And that same token goes with using a full stroke versus a short stroke machine. Short stroke machines are for soft stone, period. They don't belong on granite. If you want to do a little bit of touch-up work at the end on, little on letters or something like that with like a 3/4 D, that's your decision. But to carve the whole letter with a 3/4 D, no, you're wasting time. And if you're pricing work and bidding work, you can't afford to work that slow. Okay, you need to work effectively. You need to use the right equipment. Okay, back to carving. As I'm developing this edge, working over here isn't comfortable, and I had to get all crazy. Don't move your stand, move my tool stand, and move my box, move my crate so I can be totally comfortable. I've got super sharp tools, sharpen my chisel, sharpen my 9-point. Let me mention this, that I noticed, I've never said anything about it. When you do the 9-point and you do your 3 ways, you cut it this way, and then you turn it, cut it this way and this way. And I do all 4 sides. While you just got the interiors done, your center points will probably look really good when you did it right. And all the ones on the corners are going to look like crap, okay? Because you've got 2 sides that aren't finished yet. This side and this side, and on each corner, those are probably going to be somewhat misshapen. They're going to look really bad. Don't just keep digging the furrows. If you've got the middle ones good, as long as you haven't got these points down too far, just go ahead and dress it on a nice flat face, on your big wheel, and it should bring those points right back. But when I talked about sharpening before, I know I didn't mention that. I'm pretty sure I did. But move and get really comfortable, because instead of reaching and being all crooked, because right here is really close, now I can come over here and it's very easy for me to work off this side and be completely secure. I'm not going to lose my balance and slip and pop an edge here, okay? So just get where it's comfortable, and don't overexert yourself in some uncomfortable position, all right? Back to cut. Don't get greedy, okay? It'd be real easy to take this chisel and go right to the bottom and push hard and have that pop off. The problem is it could dig under. So take your top off and work down to the bottom. Don't check that line in the bottom and rush it. Just go ahead. If you want to check the line up above it, take off a bunch. That's better. But it's best not to lean into that and then create a line down there that you may wish you had. All right? That can work. coming really well. Now, using the right hand machine, like I said, big or small, sometimes, like on this edge, this big machine, if I go really slow, was taking that off easier, okay? And so I used it instead of forcing the small machine, the 3/4 inch machine, to try to do the same cut. That's why it's important that you get comfortable using either machine however it needs to be used, because there's going to be situations where it's better to use a big hammer, big hand machine. And if you're intimidated or you haven't developed the ability to handle a bigger tool yet, it's really going to compromise your ability to succeed doing that task. So this is still got some volume, and it still tapers like this. This is taller than this. This is really close to 8 inches right here. Let's see if I can ruler. See that? That's 8 3/8. Okay, it's there it goes. That's a solid 8 3/8. So I'm still 3/8 of an inch tall right there. Got to take a little bit off the back when I axe it. When we do this panel, we'll have to do that. But I've stayed up to make sure that I wasn't too low. Now, when I'm up close like this, I have to take my surround off, and so that means you got to be extra careful not to drop something. When you're down here working and you're sitting, it's not like you're standing up. If you drop a tool, it's not going to have the same potential energy in it, you know, from 6 feet up in the air as it will right here, where it's only going to fall a few inches. But we've got to still be really careful. But this is why you bevel off edges and corners where you can, just so they're more comfortable to be around and they're less likely to break. So this is looking pretty good. This is waste here that I can take off that I haven't yet. But this feather, you can, you know, I mean, if you look at it, you can see it continues to look more and more like what it should. I'm not going to worry about getting all this down perfect right now. There's no reason to. I wanted to get the bulk of it off. It's going to look wonky, and I've got to understand that, so that it's not a oh my God, I got to fix it issue. But I know that this is still tall. If this is 3/8, this is probably closer to 5/8, because this is like a 1/4 inch tipped in. And if you wanted to, you could go and try to square it some, but you don't need to cut it 2 or 3 times. You should cut it once to really make it accurate. So I'm going to do a little bit more here, and then we're pretty much ready to start working on her lower extremity and try to get this put together and get some of this mass taken off so that we can blend these drapery folds in to make them look elegant. Now, right now, this one has got they look really weird, but this and this, these are points, and this should flow to those points. And right now it's got a pretty big hump, and so depending on how I tune this, we should be able, because this point is more on the side than on the top, we'll be able to tune this and get this flowing a lot better so that it looks like it should, and we'll be in good shape. So let me go check this time. I think we're getting close, but just nice to be carving. Yeah, it looks like this video is about time to start wrapping it up. Appreciate the positive feedback about the money videos, you know, labor, bid rates, stuff like that, how to quote stuff. That's not the kind of thing you normally put out there. And part of it, it's an exam. I'm trying to set an example, and I hope that it works for the right people. I don't want to work for everybody. I mean, it just doesn't. That's the way things are. you have to have a certain amount of audacity to do this work. For somebody to send you a drawing of either send you a picture of a stone that's already cut, or send you some rendering or something, or they've got some idea of what they want carved. You have to have the absolute unshakable confidence with the ability to back it up. You know, it's one thing to run your mouth and talk about being a big shot. I can do that. Oh, I can cut that. I'm whatever. I can do all that. It's another thing for somebody to hand you a tool and say, here you go, do it. And it be a real deal, you know, not you can try it and here's a free piece of stone and you can, you know, practice 2 or 3 times and then we get the real the real stone and we'll send it to you. No, we're going to get a piece of stone that weighs 2 or 3 or 4 tons or whatever. We're going to do some work on it. We're going to do everything we can possibly do to it, so we're not liable for anything. And then you're going to do it. And then you've got to do it and not screw up. We did a lot of recuts at Gary. I mean, a lot of recuts came through that shop, and it was a very it was quite an education, because invariably they'd come in and Gary would hand it to me. He says, you cut this and it better be right or you're fired. He said that to me on multiple stones. We had all these stones that had been attempted or actually carved by other carvers and other sculptors that came through the studio over the years. And, you know, and there were lawyers calling, you know, because the sculptor had called us to do this, or the customer had called us to do this, or the retailer had called, and they were arguing about who was paid and who was in control. And we weren't. Gary said, don't even answer the phone. I don't want you talking to anybody. Nothing. Don't say anything to anybody. And, you know, we had sculptor, we had at least one project where the sculptor blew it. You know, he didn't know what he thought he could point, he thought he could do stuff, and he destroyed this stone. And the customer lived many states away. And one day this person walked in and wanted to know where such and such was. And we're like, I never heard of him. I don't know who that is. And this person says, well, this is his studio. He's the sculptor. We're going, he ain't. We never heard of him. And you know, and the lawyers got involved and all this other stuff, you know, and it's you've got to be able to produce it. And when I started this, and I talked about my CPA, who was their old friend, you know, Charles, and he says, so I walked through the business model with him, you know, about me doing this and what I was going to do, and how I was, you know, we'd work, they'd ship us stones and we carve them, they ship them back and everything. And he says, so it takes a long time for somebody to be good at this and really be fluent. I said, yeah, it usually takes many years. They figure it takes a decade or more before you're really able to be a fluent carver, you know, unless you've got a big background in it like I already had. And he says, so it's going to be hard for somebody to just, you know, open up a business a mile down the road from you and compete. And I said, yeah, there's not going to be many people that can just, you know, whip out a hammer and a chisel and go to work. He says, well, you probably got a good thing. That being said, this has never been a particularly lucrative project, you know, field of work. You know, you really struggle to make money. And so you've got to be able to do this and be happy with what you make, not think you're going to get paid what makes you happy. You got to be happy with what you make. And sometimes that's really good, and sometimes it's really not. If you got to have, you know, your 12 envelopes every month or every week whenever you get your check, and you put this aside and put that aside and put something else aside, no, this ain't your game. You're going to get one check, and you're going to have to make that check last until the next check comes, and there's no guarantee when that's ever going to happen. So I'd been laid off multiple times, and you know, I had 3 permanent layoffs in 8 years for doing absolutely nothing wrong. And I just decided I'm just going to know I'm not going to get paid instead of wonder when I'm going to get laid off again. So we did a studio. But I hope putting the information out there helps. You know, I doubt it's going to turn into this big competitive issue where now I've got somebody breathing down my neck. Maybe it will. We'll see. They got to be able to do this. I can do this. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. But there's a lot to it. So you got to be willing to be really courageous to jump into a big piece of stone and start it. And then you got to be really diligent and really patient to stick with it until it's finished. And so that's what I'm trying to do and trying to show y'all for an example. And if I'm going to be able to inspire and help at least one person do this work, I'm going to have to extend myself in a way that you normally don't extend yourself. And put that information out there, hopefully will help somebody. So, and it's applicable to other lines of work too. You know, there's other things that you do that are not mainstream. So, but anyways, we'll wrap this up. Glad you're enjoying it. I'm thrilled that I'm getting a car for a change because, man, I'm ready to get this stone. I want this thing done. I got to get it wrapped up. And I still got a lot of work to do on it. But anyways, my name's Clint Button. I'm a granite sculptor here at Carolina Sculpture Studio with a Virtual Stone Carving Apprenticeship. Thanks for coming in.